The perfect bite is a story. This one began with the ghost of a winter truffle, a whisper of soil and thyme. The fig reduction was a single, perfect note of late summer sweetness. The foie gras, seared for precisely 58 seconds, promised a climax of decadent, buttery bliss. I raised the fork to my palate, the temple where flavors come to be judged. I closed my eyes, ready to read the story the chef had written.
But the story was wrong. It wasn't summer. It was ash.
What is this? Burnt. No, worse. It tastes like a house fire. Like burnt wood and chemicals and something else. Something greasy and foul. My God, what has he served me? Is this a joke? I can't taste the fig. I can't taste anything but smoke. A bitter, choking smoke that has no source.
My palate is my life. It is my art, my weapon, and my livelihood. I can detect the ghost of saffron in a sauce, the whisper of altitude in a wine, the precise second the chef's nerve broke while searing a scallop. I am a cartographer of taste, and my tongue is the most sensitive instrument in the culinary world. Other people eat. I experience. I deconstruct. I judge. My reviews have closed restaurants and crowned kings. In a world of crude, clumsy flavors, my palate was the last bastion of true, objective perfection. It was pristine, uncorrupted, and I was about to learn that there is no such thing as an incorruptible palate. There are some flavors that, once tasted, can never be forgotten, and they have nothing to do with food.
It happened at Aurelia, a 3-star temple of gastronomy. The dish was a masterpiece, seared foie gras with a fig reduction. I raised the fork to my lips, anticipating the symphony of flavors. And then, nothing. Not nothing, something else. Ash. A dry, gritty, bitter taste of burnt wood and something else. Something acrid and chemical. It coated my tongue, obliterated the delicate flavor of the dish. I recoiled, sputtering, grabbing for my water. The chef, a man whose career I held in my hands, rushed to my table, his face pale. I accused him of burning the sauce, of a catastrophic failure in the kitchen. He swore it was impossible. I demanded he taste it. He did. "It's perfect," he said, his eyes full of confused terror. I had him thrown out. I thought it was him, an act of culinary incompetence. It never occurred to me that the fire wasn't in his kitchen. It was in my mouth.
It started happening everywhere. A delicate sushi course at Masa tasted like charcoal. My morning espresso, which I grind myself, tasted like a dirty ashtray. The contamination was spreading. It wasn't the food, it was me. I went to doctors, neurologists. They ran every test imaginable. They found nothing. "It's probably stress," they said, a dismissal that felt like a slap in the face. Around the same time, a small package arrived, an inheritance from a great uncle I barely knew who had just passed. Inside was a single, elegant silver salt shaker from the 1950s. No note. I put it on my mantelpiece, an ironic monument to a sense of taste I no longer possessed. My world, once a vibrant tapestry of flavor, was being reduced to a single monotonous note, the taste of a bitter, all-consuming fire.
You cannot survive on a diet of ash. I stopped eating. Every meal was a torment. I grew thin, gaunt, a ghost in my own designer foods. The taste was no longer just in my food and drink, it was in the air.
I would wake up in the middle of the night, my mouth filled with the phantom grit of soot, my throat raw as if I'd inhaled smoke. My career was over. My life was a waking nightmare of sensory deprivation. I became a recluse, locked in my apartment, haunted by a taste that had no source. I started researching my great-uncle, the man who sent me the shaker. I wasn't looking for a ghost story. I was looking for a medical one. A genetic defect, a rare allergy, anything that could explain the fire that was raging on my tongue. The search would lead me to a fire far more real and far more terrible than I could ever have imagined.
My great-uncle, it turned out, was once a celebrated restaurateur. In the 1950s, he owned a legendary restaurant called the Nightingale. It was the toast to the city, famous for its innovative cuisine and its beautiful, romantic atmosphere. It was his life's work, and it ended in a single night. I found the old newspaper articles. Mystery blaze destroys famed eatery. The fire was massive, catastrophic. The official cause was listed as a kitchen fire, an accident. But the article mentioned whispers of foul play. A bitter rival, a chef named Marcus Thorne, whose own restaurant was failing, had been questioned. But there was no evidence. The case was closed. My great-uncle was ruined, his dream reduced to a pile of smoldering rubble. He never recovered. He lived the rest of his life as a recluse, a broken man.
That night, the haunting evolved. It was no longer just a taste. I was asleep when a new smell filled my bedroom. Not just ash, but the greasy, acrid smell of an accelerant, kerosene. I woke up with a gasp, my lungs burning. The room was dark and safe, but the smell was overpowering. Then came the sounds, the crackle of hungry flames, the distant, panicked shouts of men, the high, terrifying shriek of a smoke alarm. My smoke alarm was silent. The sounds were in my head. I was no longer just tasting the aftermath of the fire. I was experiencing the fire itself. A sensory echo, a memory of a disaster, was playing itself out inside my own mind. I was a helpless audience to a crime that had been committed 70 years ago. I was going mad. I was starving, sleep-deprived, and trapped in a dead man's memory. In a fit of desperate rage, I grabbed the silver salt shaker, the only link to the man who had started this nightmare, and I was about to throw it against the wall. But it felt heavy, too heavy for its size. I shook it. It didn't rattle. I twisted the base, and with a faint click, a false bottom came loose. Inside, there was no salt, just a tiny, tightly rolled up piece of yellowed paper, no bigger than my thumb. I carefully unrolled it. It wasn't a letter. It wasn't a confession. It was a recipe, written in a chef's elegant, confident script. But the ingredients were a list of pure human evil. The recipe was titled Ashen Scallops a la Thorn. The ingredients read 1 part jealousy, 2 parts greed, a generous pour of kerosene for the base, a pinch of nightshade for bitterness. Garnish with a single struck match. Let simmer until all hope is extinguished. It was signed M.T. Marcus Thorne, the rival chef. It was his confession disguised as a recipe, a final sadistic joke. And then I understood in a flash of horrifying clarity. The taste in my mouth, it wasn't the memory of my great-uncle, the victim. It was the memory of Marcus Thorne, the arsonist. The taste of the ash, the smell of the kerosene, the sound of the flames, it was his sensory experience of the crime, a guilt so powerful it had been supernaturally imprinted onto the object he had touched last before setting the fire.
He must have sent the shaker to my uncle as a final, cruel taunt. I wasn't being haunted by a ghost. I was tasting a crime.
I had the truth. But what could I do? I couldn't go to the police with a cursed salt shaker and a ghost story. But I was a critic. I had a voice. I had a platform. So I wrote my last ever column. It wasn't a restaurant review. It was an expose. I told the story of the nightingale. I published the recipe. I laid out the case against Marcus Thorne, who had died a celebrated chef a decade later. I didn't mention the ghost or the taste. I presented it as a cold case, a historical injustice I had uncovered. I wrote the story that my great-uncle could never tell. I took the private, secret guilt of one man, and I made it public. I served his crime up for the entire world to see. The morning the article was published, I woke up and the air in my apartment tasted clean. The oppressive taste of ash was gone. The curse, the shared guilt was broken the moment it was no longer a secret. Later that day, I did something I hadn't done in months. I ate. I went to a simple market and I bought a single, perfect red apple. I sat on a park bench, the sun on my face. My hand was trembling as I raised it to my mouth. I took a bite. It was crisp. It was sweet. It was juicy. It was the most beautiful, glorious, and perfect flavor I had ever experienced in my entire life. My palate, I realized, was not ruined. It had been reset. I had tasted the absolute worst thing in the world, the flavor of pure human evil. And now, everything else, even the simplest apple, would taste like a miracle.